Welcome to Courageous Living. I'm your host, Kiki Ramsey. On this show, I strive to help you get courageous in all that you do. We have an amazing show planned for you today. We're going to be talking about how to balance a successful career and family life. Let's face it, we've asked this question for centuries. How do I balance the cooking, the cleaning, the children, the spouses, and still have a truly amazing career that I'm passionate about? Well, on today's show, we're really going to try to find out the answer to that question. So don't go anywhere right after this. Welcome back to Courageous Living. I'm your host, Kiki Ramsey, and today we're talking about how to balance a successful career and family life. And my guest today is Stephanie Todd. Welcome, Stephanie.
Hi, Kiki.
I'm so glad you're here on the show with me today.
Well, thank you for having me.
So, Stephanie, you have how many children?
I have 3 daughters.
Oh, okay. And what grades are they in?
6th grade, 1st grade, and kindergarten.
Oh, wow, you got the gamut
yes.
and everything. So, tell me, what do you do for a living, and why is balancing so critical to you?
Well, for the last almost a decade, I've worked as an independent marketing consultant from home.
Oh, wow.
I recently went through a divorce, and so it was tough enough for me before to handle the demands of my clients, but now it's really tough doing it as a single parent.
Absolutely. I can only imagine. I was once a single parent myself, so I really do know what that's like. So when you're day-to-day, what do you have to manage from day to day?
Well, of course, all of the children's needs and dinner, laundry, extracurriculars, and homework, all of that stuff, along with, my clients' marketing strategies.
Wow, wow. So when it comes to the children and everything that you have to do for them, and then it comes to your clients in terms of the things that you have to do for them, do you have to feel like you have to choose sometimes?
Oh, absolutely. And especially when I lose a client, or, I just say, oh, it's time for me to start making more money, and I have to start doing the prospecting and the selling and trying to, grow my business.
Yeah.
Oh, things get really out of hand then.
Right. So how are you trying to manage right now? What are some of the things that you've tried to do? Because I know we were even talking earlier, and you were talking about how sometimes you feel like you need to be giving more time to your children. Sometimes you have deadlines to meet for your clients and stuff like that. So what have you been doing, or have you been doing anything to be able to manage that?
Well, I've tried setting up special one-on-one times with each of them at different times, of the week. That's just our hour together.
Oh, that's good.
Or scheduling in my children into my schedule. But what I find happens more often than not is I'm either running as 100% businesswoman or 100% mommy. And so merging the two, that has been my challenge.
Absolutely. So why do you feel like we even have to choose? Because what I'm hearing is that we either have to choose between being an awesome, amazing mommy or having an awesome, amazing career. Why do you feel like that's the way it is? Do you even feel like it's that way for other genders, like men?
Oh, of course not. Of course not. And I don't want to believe that it's that way for us either. I personally haven't figured out how yet. So that's why I'm here, Kiki.
I know, that's why we're on this show today. Isn't that right?
Right.
So, well, that's good, because I do feel like from my own personal life, I have a husband, I have a son, and I definitely have a career. And I feel like sometimes balance may not always be equal. I think a lot of times we, especially as women, as moms, we feel like we have to do 100% everything because we want to be good. So I think it's more because we want to be good.
Absolutely. We have high expectations for ourselves. And I think that's part of my problem of what it means to me to be mommy and business owner. And, when I sit down and just try to fit it all in, because I've tried so many times to say, you know what, I'm going to put this out on paper and come up with a plan.
Oh.
And when you do that, I just get so overwhelmed with it all that it's like, this is impossible. And I think my expectations for myself as a mother need to give a little bit as well.
So we're talking about being flexible.
Right, absolutely.
What do you mean by that? Because I know flexibility is a huge thing when it comes to being a parent and being a spouse and being a business owner and being, you know, in an awesome career. That flexibility is a huge thing. The time factor is a huge thing. So when you say, I feel like I need to give more or I need to be more flexible, what do you mean?
Well, for instance, you know, we all, when we become mothers, we have our own expectations based on how our childhood was, of either the things we want to make sure we do for our kids or the things we're not going to do for our kids. And for me, I played sports all through high school. My parents came to very little games. So for me, it's so important to be there at every school event, every play, concert, game. I want to be there because I know how I felt as a child when my parents weren't.
Absolutely.
And I think that if I could accept that, Stephanie, you don't have to be at everything, right? Then I would feel more, it would be more manageable for me.
And I totally understand what you are saying, because my son plays basketball, and between me and his father, we had the both of us. But even then, I still wanted to always be there, and he still always wanted to be there. So it was really this tugging of the heartstrings when you can't be there. But maybe there is a way that you can kind of step back a little bit sometimes and try to figure out, well, if I can't go, maybe you can send a representative. So let me ask you, do you have like other people besides yourself helping in the care of your children now that you have a new situation?
Well, my parents are very supportive, and I have, my mom comes from a huge family. She is the oldest of 11.
Wow.
So I have some support, you know, there from my aunts on my mom's side, and I have great friends. So the support is there, but there's also the mommy guilt too. You know?
You know, and you talk about the mommy guilt. A lot of people don't see that.
Oh, and Kiki, my kids, they will eat it up.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Mommy, I hate your job.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Well, how do you handle that? When your child comes to you and say, Mommy, I hate your job because what? The job is taking up too much time?
Yes.
How do you actually handle that?
Well, I try to explain to them, you know, Mommy works so much for you. You know, I'm very honest and frank with my children. You know, the house has to be paid for, the lights, you know, Mommy has to work. And, you know, I even set up a system, a gold star system in my house, where it's like you, if you let Mommy work, Mommy's on the phone, and you stay quiet, Mommy will give you a gold star. And once they reach 10 gold stars, I take them out one-on-one. Because that's the thing, I have 3, so they are all vying for that individual attention from me.
Absolutely. So when you do that in terms of rewarding them for the gold stars and everything, do you feel like that is more applicable or acceptable in your book? You feel like when you're doing the work that makes you feel better?
Well, I have noticed a pattern with me. When I'm not working, I'm not happy.
Okay.
I'm not happy. You know, I just recently moved, and so I took off that entire week really just to focus on moving and get things organized and everything, and get the girls into, you know, this new school year. And I was okay that week. But then the second week, you know, things are slow because I took off for that week. And Mommy just didn't have enough pep in her step. You know, like I don't feel that inner fulfillment. You know?
So you're not more so the mom that would quote unquote consider herself a stay-at-home mom, but
I'm a work-at-home mom.
Work-at-home mom, and I love that tag. I love that. But here's the thing. Do you feel like it's different because you work at home versus going into a job? Because sometimes working at home, it can be quite hard because I too am an entrepreneur, and I know that being at home, people think they can call you at all hours of the day. Your kids see, they know that you work, but they're saying, I still hate your job because you are putting those boundaries, like I need this to be the time for me to work. But do you feel like that's harder?
Oh, that's definitely an element in balancing it all, because family, friends, they don't respect my time with me working from home. I had, you know, to them it's like, well, you have it easier than me.
Wow.
But really, I've actually considered going back into the corporate world and having a 9-to-5, because, you know, for me, working for yourself, I'm always working.
Right. Yes.
Unless I completely shut down and say there's no work happening this week, I'm always working. And, you know, I'm up 2 o'clock in the morning thinking about ways to bring in more clients, or how to help a client, or, you know, I found out about this small business and I bet I can help them, and here's how I can help them. There's always something. You know, the hamster wheel's always running.
Right.
And people don't really get that. Sometimes I say, Stephanie, maybe you just need to get a 9-to-5 where you can go in and leave it there.
But even then, if you got a 9-to-5, being successful, ultra successful, because that's what we're talking about.
It'll never happen with a 9-to-5.
But it could. But what I'm saying is, even then, whether we decide to be an entrepreneur or whether we decide to work in corporate America, we're all striving to be the best that we can.
Oh, yeah.
So I feel like that balance thing comes no matter what, because we're going to always have the children and, you know, the cooking and the cleaning and the homework and sometimes the spouses and all that. We're going to always end up having those things. But when the demands of the job, like you're talking about, comes about, then how do we normally really put it down to handle that? So I think that that's really our question.
Yeah, and balancing it so that, you know, you can support your family financially, right?
Right.
But your kids don't feel neglected by it either.
Absolutely. And I think in our next segment, we're going to really be talking about that financial piece too, because I think that plays a huge deal in how well we balance career and family life. Because if we have to work full time and work a lot of hours, but yet still we need to spend this time with our family, then how do you honestly give that balance what it needs?
Absolutely.
And feel good about it.
I'm looking forward to it.
I am too, so I'm super duper excited. So I want to thank you all for watching this segment of the show. When we come back, we're really going to be diving into how to successfully balance the two with our next guest, Joanna Hoffschneider. Thank you so much. Welcome back to Courageous Living. I'm your host, Kiki Ramsey, and we're talking about how to build a successful career and a family life. And me and my guest, Stephanie Todd, we were actually discussing all the different challenges that we face when it comes to trying to balance the two. But joining us is my guest, Joanna Hoffschneider. I'm so happy that you're here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
And the reason why you're on the show is because I truly feel that you're ultra successful in your career, and hopefully you can shed some light on this conversation for us today.
Thank you. You're very kind.
Thank you. So, okay, so you tell me about what you do.
Sure. I serve as the Vice President for Business Development and Marketing for Grimm & Parker Architects.
Oh, okay.
We're a community architecture firm here in Maryland.
Awesome. Very, very good. And how many children do you have?
I have one son. He's 14, nearly 15, and he's a sophomore in high school.
Oh, I know about that because I have a son. He just actually went to college, and so I know what that balance is all about. Yeah. So thank you for joining us here about this conversation. This question has been asked for ages. How do you balance a successful career and family life? Yeah. Let me ask you, how did you get to be the vice president? I mean, that's a pretty top-level job. How did you even get there?
Thank you. So I'm one of a number of vice presidents at Grimm & Parker. I'm not the only one. It's been a very interesting career path for me. I think in terms of contributing to my success, some of it was just taking the plunge. When opportunities come along, it's that balance of you have to look at the pros and cons, but you just have to take a leap of faith sometimes. Yeah. Believing in yourself, leveraging the talents you've got, and making the most of the opportunities that are given to you. Right. I've also been both fortunate, and I do believe you make your own luck, to have employers who had faith in me, who sometimes took a chance on a slightly unconventional arrangement, and that's really allowed me to build a pretty interesting career path.
So what I've seen is, and Stephanie, we talked about it too, what I've seen is that you talk about taking the plunge and really, you know, moving to the top. I see that it's hard for some women. What would you say for a woman that, you know, have, like we all are talking about balance?
Yes.
To balance that and then actually still take the plunge to go to the top.
Yeah. So I think it's a couple of things. I don't think the term of balance is particularly helpful. The best analogy I can give is if you're on a balance board, then when one side gets out of balance, it collapses. I don't tend to think of it as balance. I think of it more as riding a wave.
Okay.
Sometimes it's the career that's on top, and you're surfing that. Sometimes it's the family. That helps because it's not a competition.
Okay.
And success, I guess this is my other thought, success looks different to different people.
Right, right, yeah. I know a lot of people may think about success in terms of money. Some may think about success in terms of time and everything. But I want to go back to something you said. It was just awesome. It's not a competition.
Absolutely.
That is like, I've never even heard it put in those terms before, because so many times I think that, especially women, we do think it's a competition. We have to either be the best mommy, or we have to either be the best boss, or, you know, the best at our career.
Absolutely.
But you feel like we can do both.
I feel like we can do both, and sometimes we have to push back against society's telling us that it is a competition.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm a big believer that you have to define your own success. What looks and, more importantly, feels like success for me may not be the same as what looks and feels like success for you.
I love that.
What works for my family and my career might not work for Stephanie's, it might not work for yours.
Right.
And we need to both define our own success, we need to own our own success, and we need to be confident putting that model of success out into the world.
Well, what would you say for a woman who is not confident at all? You know, because, I mean, we do have this, like, we feel like we have to choose.
Absolutely.
So many of the times. Either we are going to be able to get home, cook dinner, get the kids ready for the next day, do homework, spend quality time with the children and maybe spouse or whatever. And then I think about my career. I know I need to do this, and I know I want to go to the top, but the top is going to take time.
Yes.
You know, that kind of thing. And I'm not that confident to do that. What would you say?
I would say life is long, and there is a lot of time to get there. I think there's an enormous amount of pressure in contemporary society, not just to be successful, but to be successful by 25, successful by 30, successful by 40. And at the same time, we're living longer, we are working longer. Careers have lengthened. Family life has not. Your kid is only going to be in kindergarten once.
Absolutely.
Your 10th wedding anniversary is only going to happen once.
Right.
Your parents' 70th birthday is only going to happen once.
Right.
It is important to take the opportunities that are presented to you, but those one-off opportunities happen in both our personal and our professional lives. So it's not a competition and it's not a race.
Right.
You can try things more than once. There's a lot of research around the importance of failure. If we didn't fail, we wouldn't get anywhere.
It's so funny that you say that, because when you look at some of the biggest fears amongst women and even men, it's the fear of failure.
Yes.
But you have to fail in order to succeed.
Yes.
And so I think that a lot of times, you know, Stephanie, and you can chime in, have you been afraid to fail in, you know, your life in terms of business and children?
More so failing as a mother.
Wow.
That's probably why it's so hard for me to strike up the balance or ride the wave, because You know, my biggest fear is that my kid is 18 or 20 years old and saying, Mommy, you didn't do enough, or we didn't get enough of you, or you weren't there when we needed you to be there.
Wow, yeah. And that big fear of failure is what stops so many women from actually going to the top and becoming the president or the vice president or upper management. That fear that, okay, if I do that, how can I then handle the rest of my life? How will I then be able to be that best mom and everything? Because we talked about there's no true balance because it ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
But I think that when we think about it in terms, you know, in terms of balance, you cannot not always be a good mom.
Yeah.
Like there's like, you know, there's like no time where we say, oh, I'm taking this week off. I'm going to be a bad mom. You know, that kind of thing. So.
And even though, even though I'm working for my children and for their future, children don't see love that way. You know, they see it in time and attention. So.
Absolutely.
I think as well, though, over the years, over more than a decade in this particular career, and this is a second career for me.
Okay.
I've worked full-time, I've worked part-time, and when I made a transition from part-time to full-time, and my son was about 9-10 years old, after school, after dinner, after homework, after all of those evening things, we went for a walk around the neighborhood one evening. I'd been back at work a few weeks, and his take from in that only a child can put it so bluntly way was, Mummy, I see you less, but when I see you, you're happier.
Oh.
And I think sometimes we get perhaps a little too caught up in this. We're working for our kids. We're also working for ourselves, for our self-respect and self-esteem and intellectual stimulation. And if we're not nurturing ourselves, and I don't mean nurturing in the sense of sort of a spa day on Saturday, which is always lovely, but,
we love it.
but I mean truly nourishing your soul and feeding your spirit and stimulating your brain. If we're not doing that for ourselves, we can't do that for our children.
Wow.
I'm the mother of a son, but I think particularly for mothers of daughters, you mentioned you have 3 daughters, they need to see modeled that being a successful, self-respecting woman is not just about going to the soccer games and cooking a great dinner, which is important, but is also about being powerful and emancipated and intelligent and fulfilled in all of those ways. Because there's so much
my
there.
goal.
Yeah. So I think that's really important.
No, I think I absolutely love that because we are models for our children, and if they see us model one way, they will absolutely take that on. Hence, my son just left home, and I feel like some of the things that I was lacking in, now he lacks in, which, you know, I'm hoping that he can learn to then pick those things up as he's growing to be a young man. But at the same time, it's because I was lacking in them at home. I feel like if I had been, you know, better in certain areas, maybe he could have learned more. But they do model what we do in the home.
Absolutely.
So I really want to make sure we get into this topic because it's so very, very important. When it comes to money, do you feel that money has a big importance when it comes to how well we actually balance our career?
Yes. That's the short answer. To give a more useful answer, I think money can cloud our judgment sometimes. There's a point in your career where you're making enough. You are covering your needs. As long as you're covering your needs, as long as you're taking care of your adult responsibilities, I think you need to look really closely at what are you trading off to make more money.
Wow.
And that can be really, really tough.
That is an awesome answer, and it can be really tough because I do think we do trade off a lot of things. Time and, you know, all these things, and I think that we don't realize that. But I wish we could get into more of that, but really I want to ask you, Give us 3 things that we can do to actually balance our career and family life as it pertains to this conversation, because that's really what we want to take away from this.
Sure. I would say my top 3 tips: be organized. Sounds simple. I run a single calendar for every aspect of my life. Every Sunday night, as a family, including the children, we sit down and we talk through the week. Who's where, who's driving, who's dropping off, who's picking up. That communication is incredibly important, and it manages expectations. Build trust at work and at home. You need to do what you say you're going to do. If you tell your boss that you're going to have that deliverable done by Friday, whether it's your manager or your client in a self-employment situation, get it done.
Wow, okay.
That buys you the credibility when the next week you say, I can't do that by Wednesday, but I can do it by next week.
Absolutely.
We can do that with our families as well. I can't come to this week's soccer game. I'll be at next week's.
Gotcha.
Be flexible. Stephanie talked about this. We understand we need to be flexible with our family and flexible with our boss. We need to be flexible with ourselves.
Oh, it's so perfect.
Forgive yourself
Perfect.
for sometimes bending your own rules.
Oh my goodness, those were some amazing tips. Thank you so much. I truly wish we could dive into them, but unfortunately we're out of time. It went by so quick. But I want to thank you, Joanna, for being on the show. Thank you, Stephanie, for being on the show. You both were wonderful guests. And I want to thank you all for watching. This was Courageous Living, but please don't go anywhere, because we're going to be right back, and I got some tips for you. Thank you so much for coming back. This is Courageous Living. I'm Kiki Ramsey, and I want to thank you so much for watching the first show. At the end of each show, I plan to just wrap it up and give you my thoughts and my tips on some of the things that we've learned. And so one of the main takeaways from this show, how to balance a successful career and family life, is that balance might not be balance. Life ebbs and flows. Sometimes your career might be up, which is what we've heard. Sometimes your career might be down, but it's not a competition. And I really want you to take that to heart with you as you go out and you try to balance your family and your career. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.